is phase two, of which it's more digestible and achievable. But our plan is to submit this summer and then ideally start the middle of next year and be able to open that in summer of 21. That's aggressive. We're trying our best to hit that. It may slip, but we're doing everything we can, including we'll be back in front of you if this is approved for the subdivision plan, which Jim could describe better. And we also have a master plan refresh with Site Solutions in Wakefield Beasley to make changes based on the movie theater layout, the beer and food hall, and provided this is approved here tonight and with the City Council, we'd be planning to do that in either April or May in anticipation of starting our drawings to submit this summer. So I just want you to know that this isn't going to sit here if it's approved. We're really spending a lot of time and effort to be ready to take the next step, and this would be progress for us to achieve what we're trying to achieve here. So thank you, and I'm available, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Chair Reedman and members of the board, my name is Jim Katsafikis, an attorney with Perkins Thompson, and here on behalf of the applicant Dirigo Center Developers. As Josh mentioned, we're here tonight seeking the planning board recommendation for approval of the contract zone. Right now, this property is zoned Gateway Commercial, and Gateway Commercial is wonderful for the traditional retail complex like we see all around the area, the Kohl's and Shaw's Plaza, the Lowe's Plaza. But things have changed. I think Josh spoke with you last summer, and I think Waterstone has explained to you there have been changes in retail, changes in the way that retail is conducted, moving away from traditional retail shopping centers, instead offering a mix of related and compatible uses, experiences. And so that's what's going on here. That's the vision that Waterstone has for this property. So we're before you to try to ask for your approval of a contract zone recommendation to the council, which then we'll vote on it, but a contract zone that will allow taking the next step to implement this vision. We've been steadily working, as you've seen, at pushing this vision forward. Last September, we were here for phase one, for what will be the market basket area. Last December, we were here for the amphitheater, which will be starting up at the end of May. So we're gearing up for construction of these projects and looking to move on. Some of the next steps will include, as Josh just mentioned, the application for phase two, is phase 2A and phase 2B. And also there'll be a requirement for us to have lots drawn up for lease. Some of these will be ground leased to hotels, stores, and so we need to have lines drawn. There'll be a subdivision amendment for those sorts of things. You may have seen that the streets are being financed in a novel way through tax increment financing, and so there's a long-term lease proposed of the internal roads to Metro. Because it's a lease, it's a division of land. Division of land creates a lot, so we'll be seeking a subdivision approval of that as well. But you may be asking, what is it that's so necessary for a contract zone? Well, there are several reasons that we are looking for the flexibility in the way this is regulated and reviewed as a land use. We've been working collaboratively with planning staff to come up with what we hope is an acceptable contract zone that the board tonight can see, can review, and discuss with us. There are four real areas that we wanted to focus on in a contract zone. One of them is uses. Now, just recently, the city has amended the Gateway Commercial District to add some uses, to clarify some uses that are important here. And that's great. We build on it in this contract zone. But we're also seeking a car wash, a data center, and of real importance, an indoor and outdoor performing arts facility, and an intermodal passenger transportation facility. So these are new uses, and a water park is a conditional use that would be in addition to what's allowed under the Gateway Commercial. So we're looking to supplement, for this contract zone, those uses. It's not just uses that we think require some changes to allow this development to go forward, also dimensional standards, because this is not a standard retail shopping center. We're proposing many uses, many buildings together in a complete planned mixed use development. And so there's only one building setback, and that's from the edge. Please come in. Please come on in if you'd like. Don't, that's fine. Don't let me get in the way. Come on in. Done. So there'll be a setback, but the setback is from the edge of the property along the public ways. Just that one setback, no internal setbacks. That will help with density and with the concept of this being one campus. To encourage a denser urban village environment, a greater building height is permitted. What we're proposing here is up to 12 stories, not to exceed 150 feet for a usable habitable space. That's comparable, though, to what's in Portland. It's a little different from what was seen in Westbrook, but it's comparable to what's in Portland. We've submitted a list of buildings to show you there are at least 7 other buildings of an equivalent height and use. We're also looking at increasing the density for phases 2A and 2B particularly. What we're doing is developing those areas at a density. We're proposing to develop those areas at a density equivalent to the most dense area of Westbrook. That greater density that you have in this city is in the city center. So we're at 100% for the building footprint factor, 100% for gross density. We are adopting that for phases 2A and 2B as part of building this urban village. We're also providing for a great residential density, the greatest one available under Westbrook zoning ordinance, which is 1 unit for 500 square feet. That's for phases 2, 3, and 4. That land that supports that density will be encumbered by the building. It will have to go with the building to make sure that those accompany and are accounted for with the building use itself. There's at least a 15%, a minimum 15% landscaping factor in 3 of the 4 phases. At least 2 parks are proposed, along with landscaping, usable open space, and significant trail system connections. Even in the area where landscaping doesn't have a factor in the phases 2 and 2A, there will be trees lining the downtown in filter boxes as part of the stormwater management plan. So we're trying to keep landscaping throughout the project. That's largely on the dimensional side. On the performance standards, we're also seeking some changes. One is to allow for the projection of lighting displays, shows on the quarry walls. Another is to allow utilization of shared parking and to reduce the amount of paved impervious area used for parking, in particular looking at for the residences dropping down to 1 parking space per unit for the residential units. Many of these residential units are projected to be studio and 1-bedroom apartments, maybe 2 for some others. So we're looking for one parking space per unit, and that's something that is supported by the ITE studies that we submitted along with our application. It's also supported because of what we're trying to do here, and that is to create other forms of transportation, not just a single occupant motor vehicle, a car, but bicycles, public transit, perhaps light rail. Lyft and Uber are being encouraged. We're trying to reduce the parking demand and reduce the amount of pavement that's used in this. That's part of what we're doing through the performance standard changes. Also under the performance standards, we're proposing to have a system of private ways that will be maintained by Waterstone, by an overall entity. But it will be a system that will allow for private ways that meet the city's standards to provide safe vehicular, pedestrian, and emergency access, and to provide building access and frontage. With regard to review, right now the Recreation and Conservation Commission only has an opportunity to review for open space when there's a contract zone, as here, and when there's a residential subdivision. We are providing that each one of the phases will be reviewed with regard to open space recreation and landscaping by the commission. So even if we don't have to, we're going to go through that process as part of this contract zone. One of the probably lengthiest portions of our performance standard proposals here regards signage. We have largely borrowed from the city center standards for signage. The departures where we've adopted gateway commercial are largely because the city center is great for looking for visibility from Main Street, but this is an over 66-acre development that's on a much larger scale, and so we think it needs a little greater opportunity for signage, whether it's a building signage, whether it's freestanding signs, and some others that we'll talk about in a minute. But we also want to be respectful to the location, to the community. The idea is not to turn this into Disneyland. The idea is not to turn this into Times Square. We want to make sure that we're respectful to the city, to the area, and frankly, it's in our own selfish best interest to make sure that it's not gaudy. That's not what we're trying to prepare and sell here. So, for example, the ordinance allows one ground-mounted sign per lot. We're agreeing to restrict that, even though we will be carving off a lot for Market Basket. A lot's been carved off for a restaurant. There'll be a lot carved off for a bank. We're agreeing to restrict it to 4 on this area. Do I have a pointer? Sorry. Thank you very much. What we're saying is here, 2 on Larrabee and 1 on the arterial, there will be a ground-mounted sign, and that will be it for the area, including this building, all of Phase 1, all along this road that we're calling Rock Row. Everything in this direction, there'll be the 4 freestanding ground-mounted signs, 100 square feet of sign area. That's it. Even though there will be, we are entitled to 1 per lot normally, and there are going to be several separate lots. However, on the interior, where there's a hotel and where there could be another hotel, or there could be an intermodal sign, intermodal transportation facility, we'd want the ability to have freestanding signs there, but on the interior. And so we're asking for 1 per lot here, but we are limiting ourselves to 4 for this area under the text that's in front of you. There are some departures from what you have in your ordinance. One of them is a marquee sign. You don't have anything quite like it, but there's going to be an amphitheater located here. And so the idea is there's an ability to put a marquee sign here that could be visible from this side. It would be for naming. If you go by what we call the Cumberland County Civic Center, it's now the Cross Insurance Arena, and they have a sign right out front, Cross Insurance Arena, and you'll see the same thing in Bangor at their arena, and you'll see that at the Gracie Theater. You'll see that at a number of places where you have naming rights. So the marquee sign is for that. The marquee sign is for the movie theater that might want to show what movies are playing in a way that can be seen by pedestrians in the area. So we're looking for the marquee sign, which is something different, but we think given the scale, the type of development here, it's justified. We're looking for, if you're going to put a multi-story office building downtown and sign it, above the 3rd floor, you're allowed 1 sign per side for only 1 tenant, or the top 4 tenant. I don't think that ordinance was written with the concept of a 12-story office building. So we're seeking to allow signage for up to 3 tenants, rather than limiting it to just 1 as is now, because of the scale of this development. Murals, strictly speaking, we're saying non-sign murals. We just want to make sure there's an ability to put something like that as part of the creativity that we can use through this development. One category that we've suggested alternative language and spoke with the planner to try to work on today, and I think we've arrived at a place where staff and the applicant are comfortable, and we'll see how the board feels, is with regard to internal special event signage. Most of the time when we're talking about signage, we're talking about signage that can be seen from a public way. That's what the state regulates, that's what the city is looking at. So from Route 25, from Main Street, from Larrabee Road, from the arterial, signs that you can see, we're allowed on-premise signs, limited to on-premise signs. But what we're talking about is if you're on the interior road and you're walking from this traffic circle, you're walking along here, and you may be walking over to the quarry for a show. You may be walking over to the intermodal facility, or walking down this way to whatever's built out in that area, walking over to the amphitheater. Can we reach you? Can we message you? Can we give you directions? Can we tell you about an event that might occur? Can we tell you about a new product, a new tenant, a trial, perhaps, a trial of a new product or a new vendor? Those are the internal special event signage. They're for internal use only. They're not to be seen, visible by the driving public. They're intended to be directional, informative, advertising, maybe talking about some new concepts that we want to try out where there isn't a tenant yet or a product on site. So these are the internal special events signs that we're talking about here. But we're talking about something a little bit different too. We can talk about signs, physical signs, and we're proposing in the draft that we submitted today, signs that are no more than 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide, 16 square feet of message area on each sign, and spaced no closer than 50 feet, probably further than that apart, but 50 feet minimum. And we're talking about and that might have a changeable sign so we can change the event out, or we can say, you know, show at the quarry in half an hour, or Teslas are available for you to take a look at, all those things. But we might want to do something a little different. There's going to be a parking deck right over here. That parking deck may have a wall that's not visible from the roadway, not visible to the public, but visible to anyone walking on a sidewalk. We might want to project an image on there. It's done at several developments now. And so what we've proposed is a specific dimension for the signs that might be along the sidewalk for these special event signage. And we've talked about the planning board being able to review on a case-by-case basis where we propose to have projections, because how big a projection depends on what you're looking at, how big an area it might be as a canvas, how far away the people watching are. And we realize, too, we don't want this to become honky-tonk. We want to make sure this looks right for the feel for this project. And so we're saying that there'll be a limit, an upper limit of 25 for the development of these either signs or projections throughout the development. You'll see them come in phase by phase, but the upper limit is 25. That's what we're proposing now. It's a new type of signage. It's not under your current ordinance, but it's something that we've been seeing in newer developments, and something that seems right here to be able to provide those many functions in a way that people would like to see. And then finally, the fourth area with regard to the contract zone is we have the concept here of a master plan. You've seen the master plan attached. There's a narrative that talks about our design concepts, that we're looking for public spaces, streetscape orientation, a village center, a downtown feel. Each phase has to be substantially consistent with those design principles. We know that there may be minor changes from the master plan as we go along, but so long as they're consistent with the design principles, the intent, and the purpose of this contract zone, then we would ask for the board to be able to look at those without having to come back and amend all of this. You can go back to the council as well. Given the scale and complexity of this development, we do need to be able to efficiently have minor changes reviewed. Right now, you can have up to 2 per approval administered as administrative changes if they meet the 7 criteria that apply. We're asking that for this contract zone, we take the 2 per approval limit off, so that, for example, if in phase 1 or phase 2, any given phase, we need additional administrative changes, we can come back and we know we have the flexibility to work with staff or perhaps come back on a consent agenda in order to expediently move this project along. So I've taken enough time going through this. You've all had the chance to read this, and we've been working with the staff to try to come up with changes that help them and would help the board with this process. Glad to answer any questions, comments that the board may have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
End of presentation. For the applicant? Yes.
As the applicant did express, this has been sort of a blending of zoning districts. We had suggested to try to utilize the city center district to the greatest extent practicable for those internal areas, but also understanding the feel of the external, that we are dealing with the gateway commercial around the exterior, is allowing sort of those 2 different districts to kind of be blended together, but at the same time understanding that there's going to be uniquenesses that this particular project is requesting in order to facilitate the type of development on this scale. The components that staff had highlighted to the board in its memo dealt with 3 areas that we had asked the applicant to make some minor adjustments to. Actually, I only talked about 2 in the memo, but there's one additional one, which I'm going to pass out these amendments, and I can also show on the screen as well.
Thank you.
The first edit to the document that we would suggest as part of the board's approval would be under the purpose statement. This is a fairly minor amendment. We had asked that the specific acreage that is stated, which states approximately 66 acres of currently undeveloped land, we asked that the applicant please strike that from the proposal, just because there could be evolution to the project, and we felt that was a little bit too much specificity to the particular parcel. So that was the first amendment that we would suggest including as part of the approval. The second one dealt with the height of structure. In the application packet that you have before you, the request was for 180 feet or up to 12 stories. Staff has asked the applicant to bring that down to 150 feet. In reviewing what currently exists for structures within the greater region, we did feel that 180 was the second tallest structure in the region, and that might be a bit too much for this area at this time. So we thought we'd start off a little bit less than that, and 150 is where we have settled for our recommendation, but up to 12 stories maximum. So the number of stories did not change from what they had asked for, but we asked for the height of the structure to be no more than 150 feet. And then I have one more. The third one dealt with the special event signs. In the language that was presented to you, the specificity of how much and how much square footage these particular signs would be approved of in this district was not incorporated into the language. So staff has been working with the applicant on trying to further understand exactly what the intent of this signage was. Understanding that also this is a new type of signage that we are proposing in this particular project. It was meant to be more of a pedestrian scale, which the first version may not have completely relayed that information in the language that you have before you. So we have clarified that this is supposed to be a pedestrian scale, as well as the specifics of the limitations. So I'll hand this out to you for you to review. In the language that's before you, I've shown the underlines, which are adds, and the strike-throughs, which are deletes from the proposed language that you were provided. the majority of the text relates to trying to bring this down to the scale in which it was truly intended to, which was for the pedestrians, but also in trying to ensure that we're not going to have these signs literally sitting on top of each other, which I don't think that the applicant would want anyways, but there should be some level of regulations as it pertains to these signs. We did settle on the size of the sign being no more than 6 by 4, but with only 16 square feet of actual signage area on each side, and that they need to be 50 feet apart from each other. We had discussed about the projection component, where, again, this is a very new, new thought process and how we could regulate it, and we thought that those are the types of items that, as we're coming back through for site plan review, that the applicant will have more information to provide to us at that time, and that can be part of the approval process that the board would review and make sure that the context of these projections is in keeping with what the intent of the master plan was. We clearly did not want this signage to be visible from the public way, that this is truly meant to be internal. And then we did limit the number to 25 signs, whether they be projections or whether they be actual freestanding style signs. With those 3 amendments that I have provided to you, staff has no further comments on this application and does support the contract zone moving forward to City Council.
Thank you. As far as I can see, these are minor changes, and they're all part of the public hearing. If they were major changes, we would have to have a second public hearing. I consider these minor. If anybody objects, no. With that, we are to the point where we open it up to the public. Again, I would ask anybody that wants to speak to come to the podium and give us your name and your address. And if there are questions, as I said before, I will note them and ask them after the public hearing is over. If you've been to one of my public hearings, you know that I have a quick gavel.
My name is Daniel Stevenson. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Westbrook. I'm also a resident in the city, and I live at 7 King Street. I wholeheartedly support this project, the contract zone language before you, as well as the amendments that the city planner brought forward. And I request that you send a favorable recommendation to the council for approval. It's just another step forward of moving a catalytic project, a 21st century project moving forward. I agree with the words that Jim had said in the presentation that Josh had given you, that this is not honky-tonk. This is not low budget. This is not tacky. It's 21st century. We're just not used to seeing it in Maine. It's great for Westbrook. It's great for the region, and it's great for Maine. Tourism is our largest economic engine. This is well beyond lobsters and lighthouses. This is the kind of density in a project that we need. Land is scarce everywhere in southern Maine. Going up in density is a good thing, and they've spent a tremendous amount of resources trying to get this right. I've been working with them for quite some months, as well as you have. It's mixed use, destination oriented, multimodal, forward thinking in design. It's really great to have developers move forward. Maximizing this space was, quite frankly, we could have some really milquetoast uses out there if they didn't come forward. For many of us, I grew up in this town. Driving by it, didn't even know what it was growing up. There were piles of gravel and crushed stone, and didn't even see the actual quarry until I was an adult. The only other thing I'd like to say is I do believe that this language makes sense. I think it's practical. I think it does not erode planning board's purview in any way, and I hope you will support it. And finally, if passed, I believe it'll allow the vision to come forward to fruition. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer. If it goes beyond 8, if I leave, it's not because I'm not interested. I have another engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'm sorry, the public hearing's over, Mr. Spiller.
I do this every time. So, Phil Spiller of Discover Downtown Westbrook and Westbrook Recreation Conservation Commission, also a resident, 76 Sawyer Road. Jim, Josh, Dan, you all hit the nail on the head, so my job is easy as usual. Dan, you brought up some great points. Growing up here as well, and you've all been here your entire lives, there is more knowledge on this planning board than most planning boards get after 10 years. And I commend you guys for all the hard work you put into projects like this and what you've already put into this project. But like Dan said, this is transformative. He has visited, and Josh and his team have visited many places like this, done their homework 100 times over in these new live, work, play type developments. I've had the opportunity to visit one of these as well a couple of times, and watching the people there, it is amazing. If this is even a quarter of successful as one of those projects, it is an incredible boon for not only Westbrook, but like Dan said, the region. Tourism, as we all know, has never been a fabric of Westbrook. It's never been a fabric of Milltowns, period. If you look at our 2012 comprehensive plan, it says tourism is not, and is not planned to be, a part of the short and medium-term plans of Westbrook moving forward. That is about to change. And this project, not only is it going to be transformative for the region, it's not going to be honky-tonk. It is authentic. That is one of the biggest keywords, collaborative. The number of organizations, I'm amazed every time I hear of a new organization that has been reached out from Waterstone and contacted, worked collaboratively, community meetings. It has been amazing. I don't think any of us could have picked a better community partner. And like Dan said, Josh said, this contract zone is needed for this development to even be a quarter of successful as it potentially could be. So I strongly give my support, appreciate the changes that were made for Westbrook Recreation Conservation Commission for us to look at every phase moving forward. We are excited for the project. They have already been before us at the commission. They have engaged with us from Discover Downtown Westbrook since day one. We appreciate that collaboration as well, and we look forward to both of those organizations moving forward, working with Waterstone. So we fully support Waterstone and their desires tonight for a contract zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone else? Public hearing's closed. We will now go to our regular agenda. The first item on our regular agenda is the approval of minutes for September 6th, 2018. Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Westbrook Planning Board minutes from Tuesday, November 6, 2018 be approved as presented to us this evening.
Nice to see you again. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Next item on the agenda is new business. Ordinance amendment, Rock Road Contract Zone Number 12, 58 and 80 Main Street, Waterstone Properties Group. The applicant is proposing a new contract zone number 12 to accommodate a 2.2 million square feet of mixed-use master plan. The contract zone proposes specific language regarding density requirements, allowable usage, signage, maximum building footprints, and height standards. It's tax map 42B, lot 9, 10, 11, and 14. The zone is gateway commercial. We have the item on the board. If people have questions or want to talk about anything in specific, now's the time.
I want to talk about signs. So who wants to talk about signs with me? we're talking about 25, up to 25 signs. 32 square feet each, right? 16
Well,
square foot on
That's
each side.
Total, that's total sign area both sides, yes.
Now, this is advertising.
Right, and
This is 25 ads.
could be. It could also be direction, it also could be show at the quarry in half an hour, it also could be concert tomorrow night, it could be come see the new Tesla, it could be many things. It could be directional as well as advertising. But yes, it will be an
It will
advertising.
be 25 ads to speak of,
That's correct.
on, different on either side.
You know,
It's a double-sided
it will give the
sign,
option.
so we have 50.
It would have the option of broadcasting the same message throughout the entire development at one time.
The signs will flash all one
It could.
item.
It could, or it could be distinct. Please, I'm sorry. And I think we also have some slides of some samples of those.
Josh Levy from Waterstone. Yeah, first of all, in terms of the number of them I know it sounds like a lot, but this is an enormous project on a large piece of land. So if you're spacing them out at a minimum of 50 feet, we're going to get there pretty quickly on 12. So they've really changed from what used to just be the poster boards that you'd have tacked on to digital changing ones that you see like this. You see them at Legacy Place in Dedham or Linfield Marketplace in Linfield, Mass. A lot of them, so they'll be changeable. Yes, you definitely would have some advertising on it, but you also have the directory maps. There's a lot of wayfinding components, sales. We sometimes have retailers or other users that want to test the market and see what it's like for impressions and their click-through rate online, and if this is a place that they want to open a store. We may announce different programming that's happening. Tastefully done, but an important part, of the project. Yes. And I'm sorry, these were the sidewalk signs and the pedestrian areas that we were talking about. In terms of projection, the reason we couldn't really identify all the locations is we're looking for canvases. We're looking for places to either do public art, an interesting painting, a projection like you see here. So that's why we worked with planning staff to suggest, at your discretion, but to come back in front of the board once we have a better idea of the inventory of, okay, is there some public art that we can project on or an interesting sidewall? So we are actively looking for those opportunities to make it a little bit more interesting and really address the experience.
Okay, you confirmed what I thought. It was 25 signs of kind of advertising.
It absolutely has to have advertising off premise on that. It's the rent alone can't support all of the upgrades that we want to do with the pavers and the landscaping and the lighting, and to truly create these amazing outdoor places. This is Linfield Marketplace. They all have digital boards that, they have some ads on that, but it's also directional, it's wayfinding, it's programming, it's events. We're not looking to turn this into a circus by any means. I think if anything, you've seen how much thought we've put into this, how much attention to detail. We have an 80-page design criteria manual that we require all of our tenants to sign on to that gets into the angle of a blade sign, we get so technical and hands-on about this, and they're going to have a lot of say over what we do as well and limit that. But we really want to be able to engage our guests on site, interact with them, and really create a unique experience.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That it?
That's all.
Yeah, sure.
How about if we start with the planner? I would like to pick on her. You said 12 stories and/or 150 feet. Who came up with that specific height? Was that your proposal? Was that their proposal, or was that a mutual agreement?
In the initial proposals that, before that they had put together their final submission package, they had come to us initially with 150 feet or 10 stories. And when they came in for their final submissions, they had requested the 180 feet or 12 stories, which is what was brought forward to you. When staff looked at that, we felt that that was actually just, that was a little bit too much. We had discussions about the 150. We wanted to see exactly what in the area truly supported that. We understand in the vicinity there is nothing that's 150 feet tall. So this will be a departure necessarily from what is in the vicinity, but there should be a collection of these structures that will, with the intent is that they do not feel like it is one structure in amongst a bunch of single-story structures. So the 150 wasn't the initial request by the applicant. They did come back with the 180, and we pushed back and said that we would concede at the 150.
Do you have, does anyone here have an idea of what Franklin Towers is?
Yes, it's in the material someplace.
186?
I found it. Franklin Tower is 175 feet.
75. Which is the 186, Jim? Back
Back
Bay
Bay
Tower.
Time and temperature buildings, 14 floors, 173. One city center is 13 floors, 161, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Deering Pavilion is 11 floors at 101 feet.
Okay, thank you. As strongly as I believed, the only way we can really revitalize the downtown is by bringing people in. I'm glad to see that this project is in my definition that I've been saying for longer than you've been alive, and that is why not Westbrook. So I believe in the future, in the near future, that the only way Westbrook is going to be able to economically grow is going to be out, because that's the only way we can go, and still have lots of land, because I believe we need lots of land. However, up is a good way. Who wants to talk about the quarry walls? You may want to sit down there, you know. You won't have to be getting up so much.
Josh Levy, Waterside. I joked earlier that if this doesn't work, I'll be living in there, so I can
Oh,
tell you a lot
okay.
about the quarry.
As I look at this rendition, I can tell what the greenish blue is, although I'm shade blind. But there's an awful lot of white. Is that what you classify as the quarry walls, or would that be from inside of your space looking towards over the water?
Great question. That's shown as a concept for a park. If you remember, we and our architects got a little carried away on some of the first renderings. We had some buildings in the quarry. I think you may have seen the giant lighthouse coming out of it, and so we've brought that back to reality. We're trying to figure out now, as part of the master plan for this quarry environment, can we safely get the public in and out of there and create a park inside of it? And it's an incredible experience. If you've ever gone down into that, it's a whole nother world, a whole nother environment. And right now we're working with Haley and Aldrich, which is a world-class geotech engineer, S.W. Cole, who's a world-class geotech engineer, really looking at the supportability and safety of those walls. So we're not there yet. We hope we can, but that's very much a, I don't want to say long shot, but a goal of ours if we can accomplish it.
Okay.
We're
Thank
not
you.
there yet. So that, it really should all be blue where that is. Quarry walls itself are the walls of the quarry, which you can see right here, which provide a great canvas. We've been working with different arts associations and groups, Creative Portland, others, working with some in Westbrook and throughout Maine. And then our digital projection company, where you can take an iPad and you could have 12 artists, and it's not that hard to do. They could sketch for a day, and then that gets projected on the wall, and then that stays up for a month, and it changes over time. So we're just starting to explore what we could do with the quarry, but instead of just fencing it off and leaving it as a eyesore. We want to really engage it, and I think you mentioned Bellagio water fountains last time, or water fire from Providence. We're really trying to explore what could be. So we're going to start small. Our goal would be recreation to begin with, and then if we can get some type of show or interaction or projection onto those walls, would be really exciting.
Okay. Those are the major questions. I was also intrigued when I heard light train. I was intrigued that one, and bus transportation, not only locally, but probably regionally and interstate. So I was pleased at that very, very much so. And I too had concerns, as my friend Mr. Isherwood had, with the signage, but you did a pretty good job explaining that.
Thank you.
So I'm not as concerned as I was earlier. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca, anything? No? Kim? Joe? Ladies? No? Well, let's all go home. Yuck, yuck, yuck. There is a motion on page 2 of the memo to recommend to council. Mr. Daniel.
Nope, my era. We're not going to discuss what I used to teach. There you go. Before I make this motion, are we going to handle these
Those are all included.
all included?
All included.
And have all the changes been made in this?
We have a document that now has those in it combined, provided that the board takes no issue with the insertion of those items.
Okay. I move to recommend the proposed ordinance amendment for adoption by the city council. Is it that simple?
Do I have a second? Seconded? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none? All those in favor? It's unanimous in favor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't get up. I'm not going to end the meeting. I just want to sit around and look at you for a while. With that, we're done.